Final score at Easter Road, Celtic 2, Hibs 0, and Celtic continue their perfect start to the season with 2 wins from 2. This is Tino with the Final Whistle Show, joined here by Joe. Joe, first one of the season, I think, for yourself. Welcome back to the show. What was your thoughts on that one?
First one of the season. Good to be back. It was good to get 3 points. First and foremost, winning the Easter Road has been a bit of a struggle for us in years gone by. Our record there is absolutely horrendous, but got there in the end. Really good first half. Slightly slower second half. Some good stuff, but we won in the end, and that's the main thing.
Exactly. We'll get into some detail. I think to an extent it was your classic game of 2 halves. The intensity was gone. So, such was Celtic's strong start to the game. You scored, within 3 minutes, and it almost sets the tone, and it definitely set the tone for the first half. But second half, it wasn't quite as free-flowing, was it?
No, it wasn't. And for a number of reasons, I think we did create so many chances very early on in the second half, and it felt almost as if, and I think Chris Sutton said this, it seemed as if we sat tired a bit, we ran out of steam. And there comes a point when we created a lot of chances by doing the same things. We're playing that ball in behind for Kygo. There comes a point where it does become a bit predictable. Now, it could be tiredness, fatigue-wise in terms of physically, but also mentally, that if we're trying the same thing over and over again, any team, regardless who you're playing, might suss it out and be able to stop it. So, yeah, it could be a combination of that. But we're early on in the season. We're nowhere near full strength as to what the fans expect, nor Brendan Rodgers expect, whether it's who he has available just now or in the future. So, not a lot to be concerned about, and it's a hard game. So, yeah, ran out of ideas possibly near the end. But all in all, it was relatively comfortable.
Yeah, you never felt at any point that Hibs were going to take anything serious from the game, although we did get a wee bit complacent in the second half. But I think all in all, early part of the season, over the piece, you're seeing some really good passages of play and some really good link-ups from Celtic across the board. And that's only going to get better, as we tick off the games moving forward. What about the start 11, Joe? It's obviously at different times it's one for much debate, but there wasn't really any surprises of note this week, nor did we expect any. The suggestion was that Dai's Maeda might have come back into the front line, but he stuck with that front three of Forrest, Kygo and Nicholas Khun. What do you think of them three as a forward line at the moment?
At the moment, it feels like they're enough for what we're up against. It would concern me a bit in Europe going forward, if I'm being honest, with the front three. Just given I thought Forrest struggled in Europe last season, Khun seems to be coming into a bit more of a game now, but maybe there was a lot of question marks raised over him when he came in, so he's still got a bit to prove. But as the front three, I suppose near the end of the season, as Khun, as much as Maeda was in that front three, I think Khun stepped in really well. But yeah, I still think it's a position of strength for us. I don't think we've really got a settled front three yet, for good reasons and bad. Obviously, Ida's arrival was, I was going to say imminent, but we don't know. It could be a week, it could be 2 weeks, it might not ever happen. So I suppose it's been a decent front three so far. I would like a lot more competition in those areas, though, because it seems that our squad depth in that area, other than Maeda, seems to be, questionable.
Do you know, you took the words out of my mouth, Joe, in terms of depth. There's also a comment just come in from Colin Stewart. Good win, but the second half showed we need more depth. And I completely agree. I think that's exactly where we're at. I think Celtic's first 11 is pretty decent. And when you go to the reserves, 1 or 2 off the bench, also make telling contributions. But I think by and large, across all key areas of the squad, I don't think we have that volume, that depth of squad that definitely you need for Europe. Europe's a completely different beast, completely different challenge. And you might get away with it to an extent domestically until you pick up injuries. And it's inevitable for any team in any given season. You'll pick up knocks or suspensions. The Kygo one is a concern. We'll get to that later on. But the serious lack of options in terms of the number 9 position has got to be an issue. And it's not, everybody's seen it. It's not something that just crept up on us and it's just a new situation. We've known for some time. Actually, there was concern even, was it the Asian Cup in January, where people were concerned that we would lose Kygo. As it happened, he didn't make the squad. But even at that, you're still light because O was the only reasonable alternative, and that probably wasn't the best option either. What we'll do, Joe, before we kick on, thanks as always to everyone who's joined us here on the live. Please be sure to bring in your comments and questions for myself and Joe. We'll be about 30 minutes in total, so 25 minutes to go in this recording, and we'll try and make our way around any questions that do come in between now and then. As always, you can also support the Celtic Exchange in a variety of different ways. You can see the show notes for ways and how you can do so. Joe, moving forward, as mentioned, we get that brilliant start. It's 2 minutes something on the clock. Nicholas Khun plays a good ball over the top for Kygo. I was wondering, should he maybe have played Khun back in, but he's gone alone, got a decent shot away, but the keeper's not got enough on it. James Forrest does what all good wingers do. He's followed up at pace, and a clever ball across, and Khun slides in, and it is 1-0 Celtic. You couldn't ask for a better start, could you?
No, you definitely couldn't. And I thought the same thing. I thought Kygo could have scored it to Khun earlier. But James Forrest, really cool, calm, composed. It's also his left foot as well, which I think probably would go under the radar about how hard, tricky that would be from that angle to play it in perfectly into Khun. So no, it was definitely a good start. And it was, I think up until then, even as much as it was an early goal, Celtic looked really dangerous even before that. So it definitely was the perfect start for us.
In general, between that and across most of the remainder of the first half, I just thought Celtic were just very sharp. It was very crisp. You've got a Hibs team who I would say are in transition at the moment. They've brought in a number of new bodies. David Gray is now the permanent manager. There's a state of flux to an extent there at the moment, and it looked that way. They looked out of sorts, and Celtic were taking full advantage. And we just had full control of the game. But there's one thing controlling the game, you're also creating chances, which is a real plus. Who really stood out for you, Joe, in those early exchanges? Who were the guys that stepped up to the plate?
I actually thought Greg Taylor was exceptional. As much as, we're obviously threatening going forward, I think any sort of moves were started from Greg Taylor. It was receiving the ball out wide. Martin Boyle, who historically has been one of Hibs' more dangerous players, probably on paper in years gone by, have actually been linked with Martin Boyle coming and doing a job for Celtic. He didn't have anything to do. It was very limited in what he could do, Martin Boyle. And I think that's all that's down to Greg Taylor. Now, again, not only his job as a fullback, but also his job actually stepping into midfield and, very simply keeping the ball, setting the pace of the game, not doing anything overly complicated as much as he was playing really nice balls over the top later on in the game. I thought Greg Taylor set the tone. And obviously, I think good players like Greg Taylor, it allows other guys to step their levels up, push their levels up to even greater heights. And I think it really helped McGregor, O'Reilly, and especially the front three, get into the groove. And yeah, Greg Taylor for me, definitely.
I think he was very decent. And Greg Taylor, throughout his whole career at Celtic, he's come up for criticism, sometimes justified, sometimes not so much. And he's been talked about at this moment in time because he seems reluctant to sign a new deal, potentially because he doesn't want to play second fiddle to anybody. And he's right to do so. You need to have that belief in yourself. And I think Greg Taylor does that. But in the meantime, whether he signs a new deal or not, all you can do is go out and perform and show what you've got. And I think he deserves great credit for what he's bringing to the party. Matt O'Reilly, a wee bit off it today. Some good touch. He's a seriously talented guy, but maybe not quite as free flowing as we've seen him in different times. Generally, Brendan Rodgers continues to maintain that Matt O'Reilly continues to perform at high levels. In terms of his training output and what he's bringing to games. Do you think the ongoing speculation, though, we're entering the last few weeks of the window now, do you think that may have an impact on him being slightly below par today? I
mean, I think it's only human to have it for something like that to have an effect on you. I mean, we've seen O'Reilly specifically as well around the Christmas, January time when the links were starting to emerge with Atletico Madrid and the prospect of maybe moving on to a new club, that it maybe did affect his form slightly, and thankfully picked up again as the season sort of entered its conclusion. But I think from O'Reilly's point of view, it must affect you in some way, because I mean, if you think even just off the football pitch that within a week you could be moving country, moving home, living a completely different way of life, albeit it could be down south, but it also could be Atalanta if they actually listen to Celtic and pay what they're asking for. But if you get the prospect of actually moving away, likewise, if you're Celtic trying to sign someone from abroad, it must distract you in some way. So I can see how that might have affected them today. I agree with you in the sense of I think that he was a bit off par today. Last week I thought he was a lot better. He looked a lot more comfortable in the ball. the standards we set for Matt O'Reilly are ridiculously high. So I suppose that's maybe a problem with Celtic fans, that we set the bar so high that if anyone that falls slightly below that it's deemed as a slight disappointment. But yeah, I think it probably did affect him, and it could be his last game for Celtic. We never know.
It could be. I don't think it's too dramatic to suggest that, and I think he was, he was pretty decent today. But as you say, we set high standards, and when someone like O'Reilly falls a bit short of that, we're quick to pounce. Or maybe it's just me on this occasion. I think you're right though in terms of it can't not affect you. It's the prospect of potentially moving to a whole new country, having been pretty comfortable here in Scotland and in Glasgow for the last 2-3 years. And it's also the prospect of, let's not be, kidding ourselves, life-changing money. It is the money that could set him up for life, him and his family, and whatever his aspirations are moving forward. So there's a lot to consider, and it's understandable if it does niggle. I put a tweet out last night, don't know if you've seen it, about, I think Atlanta have now made what's a fourth offer that's been rejected by Celtic. And I then suggested they want to stop wasting everybody's time, and I don't think I put it quite as politely as that, but stop wasting everybody's time and come back with a serious offer. And then I had to bow down to the replies that said, well, you say that, we're doing exactly the same with Norwich. And I guess we probably are, and it's just how that game goes. But whatever happens with Matt O'Reilly, we know that he's got that professional attitude that he'll continue to show up, make himself available, and give his best every time, and that's all you can ask. Joe, we get the second goal, 19 minutes in. It's Callum McGregor. A relatively rare goal for McGregor. He used to score a few more in his younger days. He's now 31 years of age. It's obviously fallen in the week that he's announced that he's retiring from Scotland duty as well, to fully concentrate on what he's doing at Celtic. And it's a great goal to put us in a comfortable position. Yeah,
it takes it really well. No, obviously, I'm seeing it on Twitter that it was poor from Hibs defending wise. The move starts from Celtic's press. That we can tell we like about, a centre-half plays a slack pass back to his keeper and it almost falls into our path a bit too easily from a Hibs point of view. But we pressed him really well. And Callum McGregor, as you said, he's not scored a lot of goals recently. I was actually trying to think, even just watching the game at home, when they actually scored his last goal for Celtic. It doesn't happen very often. But yeah, he took it really well, showed exactly what he's capable of. Not that it was ever in any doubt by any Celtic fans, but it's actually good to see him getting in those areas when perhaps in the past people have said that, he has probably more naturally suited in that more holding role now due to his age and due to his maybe the players that are playing in front of him. But it's good to see that he's still got that in his locker. And again, as you say, nobody really ever doubted it. So, I'm delighted. It was a really good finish.
It was a great strike, and it's also a clever pass inside from Nicholas Khun. I like a lot about what Nicholas Khun's doing just now. He's looking lively, he's looking hungry, and he's impacting the game. He seems to link up well with mostly O'Reilly out in that right-hand side. They both, I think Khun's a natural left footer, although he looks quite two-footed, but having O'Reilly, despite being left footers, they tend to do their best work out in the right-hand side, and it leads to several chances. It's maybe that kind of chance creation you were talking about, Joe. We're just finding lots of space in that area, and the two of them were pivotal to that. But from McGregor's point of view, sometimes his shooting has been a wee bit questionable over the last couple of seasons. He's hit some pretty poor strikes by, again, his own high standards, but he's caught that sweep, and it'll just be a nice moment for him in what's clearly been an important week. That's a big decision to stop playing for your country. What was it, 63 caps he had, something like that? It's a big call to make, and over the piece, Celtic will benefit, and almost immediately we've benefited from that goal today. At that point, Joe, as I say, you're not even 20 minutes in, you're playing well, you're cruising, it's all there for you, and you are continuing to create chances. And going forward from there and into the second half, and I'd say up to about the hour mark, Celtic were looking really good, but there's always that frustration that, if you don't kill a game, if you don't put it to bed. One goal would have let Hibs back in, and they had some half chances. They could have made it 2-1, and then you're facing a nervy end to the game. And it was frustrating that we weren't able to find that killer third.
Yeah, it was frustrating, and as I say, it's very early on in the season, so I don't expect Celtic to click and beat their absolute best right away for a variety of reasons, but no more so than it's only a second competitive game. And to actually go from, albeit, I know you guys mentioned it, and I've mentioned it, been on the show in the past, that can't read a lot into pre-season. The real stuff starts over these past 2 weeks, and to actually get to those heights playing competitive football, it takes a lot to get to the levels that we want. So, yeah, I think we could have scored more. I did think we were a bit wasteful at times. I mean, Kyogo's chance, I think it was 0-0. It was 1-0 when it was a 1-on-1 in the first half, where again, it was good, a really good press from us, forced Hibs into a mistake. That's really easy chances that you would expect a number one striker to be taking. But yeah, we did get into really good positions. I thought our movement was really good. We're playing really nice stuff. It was just that clinical edge that we probably lacked. Hopefully we game time and a lot more minutes in the legs for a lot of these guys. Something that'll click. But we could be sitting here saying it was 0-0 and we never took our chances. We created a lot of the chances in the game. We just need to actually, our efficiency in front of goal just needs to be a lot better, especially if we're looking into Europe and we're looking into sort of bigger tests that are coming ahead.
I think that's fair to say. Celtic for the season so far, the 2 games, you've scored 6, you've conceded 0. I don't think anyone will complain about that, but it's also okay to ask the questions. I mean, let's talk about Kygo. He's an important player, and it's an important subject at this moment in time for Celtic. He continues to look lively. He's dropping into those pockets, dropping into the half space, if you want to use the terms that you'll hear from a lot of pundits. And he's linking up play and he's getting in positions. The chance you talk about, though, it's at 1-0, it's a slack back pass, and he's in on goal, albeit at an angle. And they're the kind of chances you've seen Kygo finish time after time, and he's not been able to put it away on that occasion. There was another really good move in the second half. Counter-attack as such, Hibs had been pressing, and we broke through that and attacked very effectively down the left-hand side. It comes across to Kygo, not too dissimilar to one from Celtic Park last week, and he just fails to make the connection at the key moment. I don't have any concerns about Kygo, though, in general as a player, and you'll hear the stat now, and it's increased after today. I think it's now 14 or 15 away games without scoring a goal in Scotland. I think it was last September. Fine, kind of. I made the argument, I don't care if he never scores an away goal again, as long as he scores the big goals in the big games against the likes of Rangers and in Europe and in cup finals and whatever else. But it'll be weighing on his mind, because you're a number 9 or a number 8 in Kyogo's sense, but you know what I'm saying? These guys live and breathe goals, and that'll be something that's niggling at him, and I'm sure he's desperate to get that goal. But the bigger picture, Joe, is the fact that we all now know, with O having been sold, with Adam either not currently at the club, and who knows how that'll go, we don't have a genuine backup for him. So we see he was struggling from the moment he took that kind of shoulder knock. He's got ongoing issues with his shoulder, as we know. He kind of fell awkwardly and kind of rolled into it. At that point, I think you should have taken him off. He's played on, and he's then picked up a couple of other niggles. He took a dunt in the box. He just wasn't quite at himself from that point on. It was like he was protecting himself, from injury. And that being the case, you have to take him off, given that he's the only legitimate option at this moment in time. And it's not a great reflection on where Celtic's squad is at this moment in time that Mikey Johnson is deemed the best alternative. Anyone who listens knows that I like Mikey Johnson as a player, but he's not an out-and-out number 9. So the fact that he's the next best thing to come on, and he himself was unfortunate he had to go back off with injury, almost to highlight further just how thin we are in that area. And whatever way you want to dress it up, whatever way Celtic want to dress it up as, difficult windows, hard to get guys, whatever. Bottom line, Joe, it's really poor planning that we've only got one number 9 and we're now 2 games in to the competitive campaign.
Yeah, it is really poor planning. I think that it's disappointing, as you say, if Mikey Johnson's the person that's getting thrown on. I mean, Brendan Rodgers came out and said it last week. How much of it I believe, I'm not really sure. But the accusations that have came, it's almost as if Mikey Johnson's getting thrown on as a message to upstairs to say, this is what I've got to play with here. Get me a striker, get me 2 strikers, get me bodies in the building. Because Kygo doesn't play a lot. I mean, I'd probably say with the exception of Angie's second season, in Kyogo's time with us, he doesn't play. He's not available every week. He is prone to an injury. I think it was his first season, he had a muscular injury that he was out for about 4 or 5 months. He's not someone that can overly be relied upon. Nor would you want to overly rely upon him for the course of a season. You would rather, with a club like Celtic, with the finances that we have and the quality that we would expect, we would rather have another option for Kygo, because it'll get the best out of Kygo in the longer run if we've got a really good option to compete with him. Yeah. So I think that it's a concern that we don't have MD in at this moment in time. Whether it is a case that we're holding out for a bit of a bargain for Adam Ida. He comes on as a sub yesterday for Norwich. How much of that actually is the case, I'm not sure. But it is a concern. And all it takes is, likewise with Greg Taylor, if Greg Taylor gets injured, then, I mean, what are we going to do there? We've not got a recognised left back even on our bench. Never mind. Yeah. We would need to shuffle about the pack to try and accommodate that. So it is a concern. It's something that we really need to solve sooner rather than later. Thankfully, we've only got one game a week the way things are going due to the League Cup and no qualifiers or whatever else. So in that sense, it is perhaps a bit fortunate that we're not in that scenario, but it's something we need to sort quickly, because all it's going to take is one game where, you know, we are perhaps in a bit more of a comfortable position. All it takes is one nasty tackle, and then all of a sudden we're in a real state.
Yeah, do you know, I've kind of, to an extent, been calling for patience in the last couple of weeks, but even since doing so, a couple of weeks have passed by, and all we've really done business-wise is Paulo Bernardo, which is fine, good business, but there needs to be so much more. And in terms of Kygo, there's lots of ways to describe Kygo Furuhashi, but robust probably isn't the main word I would use. And there was a tackle Adam Johnson smashed into in the first half. He found himself quite high in the Hibs box, and he crunched into a challenge, really kind of heavy one, stays down for a wee minute or so, shakes it off and gets on with it. It's the kind of challenge that Kygo would have just, let's change it, lads. I've not quite made it through that one. And I just think even more reason to get back up ASAFP. You know, it's time to do that business. What's the date? The 11th of August. The window now runs for a week on Thursday. That's the date, isn't it? The 30th of August. Is that right? No, 2 weeks on Thursday. So
I thought it was after the Rangers game.
No.
Was it early?
30th of August, Rangers games on the 1st of September. So we're running out of time. None of the twos have got a handle on our dates here, Joe. It's a Sunday afternoon. But bottom line is, time is ticking, and something must be done. There's people will speculate. I heard Chris Sutton speculate. Is Brendan Rodgers sending a message to the board by putting Mikey Johnson up front? There's nothing, cloak and dagger about it, or mysterious or secret signals. It's just as what it is. It's not a mystery message. It's just, this is what's going on, and everybody must see it. Somebody asked a question, I think it was in our YouTube comments or Twitter over the last few days. Do you think the Celtic board see what's going on, or are they burying their head in the sand? Of course they see what's going on. Michael Nicholson, whatever you think of him or otherwise, he's a football fan and he's a Celtic fan, and he watches all the games. He's at more games than you or I, Joe. He's there every time. He sees what's going on, and they must be looking to address this. I believe they are looking to address it, but the time for talking is long gone. The time for action is here and now, and it must start with Adam Ida in the next few days. Let's get that done, and then add that depth that we've spoken about, because when you go to the bench at the moment, there's a Mikey Johnson who doesn't seem to be doing it. There's an Odin Thiago Home who's a maybe guy for Celtic. There's a Tony Ralston who's a decent backup. But who's the guys that are going to come on and say, I'm just as good as the guy that's coming off? I'm as good as Rio Hatate. I'm as good as Kyogo. I'm as good as Johnson. I called him Adam Johnson earlier on, by the way. It's Alistair Johnson. Yes. It's been a long Sunday, Joe. There's a lot going on here. But we need to make those additions, don't we? There's just, the time for talking is well gone. And we need to start taking action. And backing Brendan Rodgers up, because you can see what he'll deliver. He's an excellent coach. He's an elite coach, a talented guy. And we're playing particularly well at the moment. 2 or 3 key additions, and I think we're a very good side. I think we're a good side just now. I think we could be a very good side, and we could genuinely compete in Europe.
Yeah, and I think looking at Rodgers' sides historically, at one point in our midfield, we had 6 options in midfield of Brown, McGregor, Armstrong, and Cham, Rogic. That's 5, Joe. But there was another one there. But with a really strong midfield to compete with, where nobody was really safe in that starting 11. If you'd one bad game, there was someone else quite literally there to take it and there to step up and there to perform, and they were good enough to do so. Celtic don't have that problem. Don't have that luxury just now. We are very reliant on Matt O'Reilly, as you say earlier on, being at his best or being at a standard that we would expect. He doesn't have that problem where if he has a bad game, there's someone else knocking on the door to take his place. I don't think Rio Hatate had the best of games today, if I'm being honest, but I don't really know what Paulo Bernardo done to justify starting himself over Rio Hatate. There was nothing really that Bernardo done in the game that made me think, by the way, Brendan's got a question. Brendan's got a question mark as to who's going to start next week. And absolutely, as Bridal says, I thought he looked like that as well. I thought he looked like the great night last night. But we don't have that problem now. We can extend that to our back four. We can extend that to Liam Scales. I don't personally. I think, as Matthew used the example in the show earlier on, I thought Liam Scales had a great season last season for large parts. But he has a credit card that's been maxed out. I don't think there really is much more that can be done with Liam Scales. I don't think he's going to be any. I don't think he's ever going to improve any more. That he's going to get to the level of Carter Vickers. We need to reinforce that squad. We need to make improvements because otherwise we are an injury away from going backwards to having the depth, the gap between our bench and our starting 11 is massive and it's widening for every injury that we get.
Yeah,
we need to start signing players to compete because it will improve the squad that we have and the players that we have already at the club, but also it will improve our performances as a team. So I'm very, very set that we just need to get our business done.
Do you know, it's a good way to put it, that gap in quality between your starters, and most Celtic starters are guaranteed at the moment, at least 8 or 9 of them. The gap in quality when you go from that to your bench options is too big. It's too wide a gap, and you need your reserves, your backup players to be maybe not quite as good as a Callum, McGregor, Matt O'Reilly, Kygo, but they need to be just only a wee bit below, not much more. I mean, actually, if you look across the team, including from the goalie now, from Schmeichel out, your back four, Alistair Johnson, Carter Vickers, Scales and Greg Taylor, your midfield three of McGregor, O'Reilly and Hatate, and certainly your centre forward and Kyogo, they will start almost every game because there's no viable alternative. The wings will change because we've got Khun and Maeda and Forrest, maybe Yang if he steps up. But those other key positions I mentioned, nobody's taking Callum McGregor's position anytime soon. It's not going to be a Wata. Nobody's taking O'Reilly, and rightfully so. He's a class player. Same as Hatate when on form. Bernardo might challenge that, but pretty unclear. And there's nobody better waiting in the wings to take any of the positions in the back four or goalie. And that's not a good place to be. And you'll have heard Ange quoted, I think, was it last year, that competition is sometimes the best coach. Maybe it was Rodgers. Somebody said it, Joe. Somebody smarter than me said it. Competition can be the best coach. And we don't have that competition. Rio Hatate and Matt O'Reilly to an extent were a bit off form today, but they'll start next week if they're both still at the club. Greg Taylor will start next week. Liam Scales will start next week, not because they're dynamite, and that, you know, it's not to take away from what they've done so far, but it's a lot of it's to do with the fact that there is no viable alternative, and that's not a healthy position to be in. Anyway, to bring it back, Joe, to today, obviously, in the end, it's a relatively comfortable win. I've not heard in the post-match. Obviously, we're recording as we speak, but the manager, I'm sure, will be relatively pleased. But he'll want to see that killer touch. He'll want to see 2-0 become 3 and 4-0. I don't think it, again, someone asked in the questions here, and I can't track it right now, but asked if Rodgers asked them to take their foot off the gas to send that message. I don't think so. I think just maybe a wee bit of complacency kicked in, and, you know, we didn't quite have that killer touch in the final third that we might have on any other occasion. But I do think Rodgers behind the scenes absolutely knows that there's room for improvement. But as I say, Joe, I feel it's just 1 or 2 tweaks to this team. But it's not just buying guys for the squad. It's buying guys that can genuinely challenge your first 11 and say, listen, I can be your guy in midfield, or I can be your left centre half, or I can be your left back, or whatever. And I do think if he gets that, yeah, and why wouldn't you give him it? Why wouldn't you support him at this moment in time? Then we could see some good things. Joe, we're starting to head towards the end of the recording just now, but your final thoughts on today, and a wee glance, if you don't mind, ahead to this time next week, where we face the same opposition. It's Hibs again, but this time it's League Cup at Celtic Park.
I mean, I'm obviously happy that we won. Easter Road isn't a great place to go. The first half I was really pleased with. Second half tailed off a bit. Sometimes, as I say, can be expected for it being as early on in the season, but standards need to improve as a whole, but doesn't take anything away from that. But yeah, pleased with the result. Next Sunday, it's a game that, you know, we want to make amends for, given that we lost the similar round last season against Calmac. Rodgers wants a treble. There's no other way to put it. And, you know, we need to win again, as Celtic always do. We need to win.
Do you expect additions between now and this time next week?
Yes.
Just either?
So, I expect either and a strong rumour, like a medical booked type of. I expect players to be lined up Whether they are in the building and officially strip in front of the strip announcement and all that, I'm not sure. But I think Ida will be here by next Sunday.
I think so. He should be. That one's dragged on far too long. And geez, at least if we can get a strong rumour, Joe. No, if we don't get any signings, fine. But at least a strong rumour, that would be nice, and we can take it from there. Joe, thanks for joining us here on a Sunday afternoon. Thanks to everyone who continues to comment and ask the questions in the live. We really appreciate it. We'll be back tomorrow night, Monday night, with the Celtic Exchange Weekly. I think it's a full house again. Myself, Miff, Paddy, and James. But in the meantime, folks, enjoy the rest of your weekend. We'll see you again very soon.